Okay, we're looking like we've slowed down now, so I'll make a start. We've got quite a lot to cover on this webinar. Just say hello again. My name is David McAllister. I'm the Director of Selection and Outreach for Schmidt Science Fellows, and I'll be hosting today's webinar with some of my colleagues from the selection team. I'm also delighted to be joined by two of our existing fellows, a 2024 fellow and Daniel, and 2023 fellow Susmita. And I'll be introducing them and asking them some questions later. But before I start with the content, this is a really great opportunity to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Hopefully you'll all be aware of how to do that. The team behind the scenes will be curating and pulling together all the questions. We'll answer as many as possible in this time period live. But of course, it depends how many questions they have. We may have to come back to you all with recording and the question and answers once we've worked through them all. Yesterday's webinar, we had over 100 questions, so we can't possibly do that in the last 20 minutes of an hour. Any other questions, please just drop the team a line at info@schmidtsciencefellows.org and we'll be able to assist you as much as possible. Okay, so how can we cool a warming city, cool cities in a warming world? What if we could change our own DNA? Can we build robots inspired by nature? And how do we understand evolution to tackle antimicrobial resistance? These are just a couple of the examples of what existing Schmidt Science Fellows are doing within our program. And as we learned from the COVID-19 pandemic response, it was very clear that we can't resolve the world's great challenges, whether it is pandemic, whether it is climate emergency, whether it is feeding a growing population. We can't resolve these using single disciplinary approaches. And what unites all of our now 209 fellows is this real kind of recognition that we need to do things differently as a scientific community. We need to embrace the power of interdisciplinarity, and that's really the kind of common goal and common ambition of our fellows, and it's the main driver force for our program, which was established in 2018. And really, we recognize the power of interdisciplinarity to really drive innovation and do things differently to accelerate discoveries to benefit society and the world in general. And we are focused very much on supporting early career researchers who've just finished their PhDs, who are really wanting to try and do something in a different way, move disciplines, solve big problems quicker in a different way, and really identifying the next generation of science leaders. And I think that leadership component is a really important element of our program. So who are we looking for? Well, as you can probably imagine, we are looking for the academically excellent, really risk positive, curious early career scientists and engineers and technologists who really want to make a genuine difference and move across disciplines from their PhD, where they're experts in. They spend many years, honing their skills, but moving that knowledge into a different discipline, to a different challenge. We are looking for people with leadership potential, to unlock the transformative discoveries of the future, who have got the character to lead teams in the broadest sense, graduate students, technicians, postdocs, but also work collaboratively across the disciplines and within the disciplines to really drive knowledge. And central to our philosophy behind this fellowship program is what we call the disciplinary pivot. And what we're really looking for are meaningful, genuine changes of focus from the PhD project into something completely different. We really want it to be immersive. We want our fellows to genuinely move their experiences and their knowledge from one discipline to another. We want it to be a meaningful shift. We want it to be balancing of risk and ambition and feasibility and creativity. But what we're really looking for is in this diagram are really the people in the green categories, the 3As, 3Bs, who are really taking that big leap from their PhD discipline into a different space. We will consider people in the orange category in the middle, the moderate changes, but really we are looking to drive that change in discipline. What we're not supporting are the people in the red category, the 1A, 1B, where there's really little change. It's just an evolution of what's been happening in their PhD. And one of the kind of rules of thumb as you're thinking about this fellowship as a potential route for your future career is really, are your ideas fundable by others? Are they fundable by traditional fellowship or grants routes through, for example, the National Science Foundation in the US, or through some of the European funding models, or UK research innovation within the UK? If that's the case, then perhaps this fellowship is not for you. We are looking for people to really change lanes and do something different. So in order, that's a real risky ask. And so what we offer you in return for this real bringing this different way of approaching things is a huge amount of intellectual and scientific freedom. You have 2 years of a personal stipend, very generous stipend per year, really to be held anywhere in the world. You can go anywhere in any lab in the world, as long as it's the right place for you to do your research. And I'll come on to more of that detail in a second. But really, it's the first and perhaps the only time that you will get that ability to do whatever you want in the scientific field. And that's a real strength of our program. Alongside that, as I mentioned, leadership's a really important and invaluable element of the training and support we provide our fellows, and our cohorts get together 3 times a year in the first year in person, along with virtual and hybrid meetings, as part of our science leadership program, which is designed specifically for Schmidt Science Fellows to really unpack the skills, knowledge, expertise to be a leader, but also to be a leader in an interdisciplinary science team, the communication skills, the knowledge and understanding required to really work across disciplines, as well as working within the different disciplines. And alongside all that is mentoring by some globally recognized researchers who've already taken that leap into working across boundaries. Our academic council are phenomenally experienced academics who give up a lot of their time to really work with our fellows, throughout their career, not just the first couple of months, but throughout their career, to really help kind of shape their thinking as new research leaders. But more importantly than all that, and in my view, and I think this is a really important element, is the lifelong community that we are really trying to kind of embed within our fellowship. These are just pictures from this year's cohort, who started in October 2024 in Oxford. As you can see, that even though they've only met each other for a couple of days, a couple of hours in some cases, you can see that already the relationships, the friendships, the engagements are already starting to build. And as we go through our year-long leadership program, these relationships just get deeper and deeper. And one of the really lovely things, in my view, about this lifelong community is the picture at the bottom right is the picture of our senior fellow facilitators who want to come back and work with our new fellows to really impart their knowledge of what it's like to be a Schmidt Science Fellow to the next cohort and the next cohort after that. And it's a real testament to that relationship we have as a fellowship and as a fellowship program team, that we can really draw upon those really strong relationships and that strong interaction we have with our fellows. So you've got to get this fellowship first. And so we have a very clearly defined selection criteria. They're split into 3 broad categories of intellect, programmatic fit, and leadership. And I'll go on to each of these in some detail just now. So in terms of intellect, as I think I've alluded to earlier, what we're looking for are people with the highest degree of scientific curiosity and a real record of achievement academically and intellectually, really demonstrated by significant outputs, whether that's papers, publications, conference proceedings, patents, data sets, whatever is suitable for your particular discipline. We want to see people who have really taken that real step in academic endeavor. We want people who are really genuinely interested in doing things differently. And we're wanting to see people who have got a track record of really looking at how to improve, how to innovate in the broadest sense, and develop and use new technologies, new methodologies to the benefit of their science. In terms of programmatic fit, what we're looking for are people who are genuinely wanting to move disciplines and spend at least a year, but more likely 2 years of postdoc study in a different field from their PhD, and a genuine belief, as we do, that interdisciplinary science and taking those appropriate scientific risks in doing so are really important components of discovery. Collaboration is also a vitally important element of our fellowship, and bringing people with diverse views and perspectives together is so important to really stimulate different avenues of thinking. So having a track record of effective collaboration, whether that's within your group, within your PhD group, whether it's collaborations that you've established yourselves or you're working within an established collaboration, these are really important elements of what we're looking for, that collaborative spirit. And then finally, leadership, as I hope you've got from my previous slides, leadership and leadership potential is a really important element of our fellowship. So really looking for people who understand the role and potential that science and technology has in making a positive difference in society and the wider world. And equally, we're looking for people with character and leadership, opportunities and potential to really take forward their agenda for change, their agenda for research, really displaying perseverance and resilience, the moral compass and the force of personality. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the loudest person in the room. That doesn't need to mean you have to be the most extrovert person in the room. Some of the most effective leaders are the quiet ones, the ones who are more reflective, are more introverted. And so I would encourage you, even if you don't feel like you have that extroverted nature of leadership, that really leadership can come in all different forms and shapes. So how will the application be reviewed? So it's I think it's a very standard assessment process for a fellowship. We receive your application with your ideas in it and your track record. This will be reviewed by reviewers, academic reviewers from your discipline to really unpack the quality of the research you've undertaken in your PhD. This will look at academic excellence and programmatic fit. From there, we shortlist down to about 100. To give some ideas, last year we had just shy of 450 applications at the academic review stage. This was whittled down by the review to the final, turned out it was 98 in the end, that we interviewed over a weekend in January. These are interviews that are run by senior figures in science, business and society that will undertake the Zoom interview, and you'll be assessed across all the 6 criteria that I've mentioned previously. Of course, not everyone's going to be an expert in your field, but they have enough knowledge of science, technology, interdisciplinarity, and wider challenges of the world that they'll be able to ask you some pretty good questions. From there, we will be then whittling that down to the final 32 fellows. So in order to be eligible, this is a STEM program. This is a STEM program. We are looking for people who are studying for a PhD in natural sciences, mathematics, engineering, computing. Unfortunately, because we are a STEM program, we can't accept people who are studying or researching for a PhD in the social sciences or humanities, or clinically focused MD PhDs or the veterinary equivalents. So clinical research is a no. Social sciences and humanities is also no. We're looking for people in that wider STEM bracket. We expect you to have completed all the requirements for conferral of the PhD between 15th of May 2025, in a couple of weeks' time, up to the 30th of June 2026. So the 13-month window, we expect you to have completed all the requirements for PhD conferral in that window. You can start your fellowship from July next year, some July, some October, depending on how well the placement process goes. And then various onboarding activities from about February, March onwards. So in order to apply, and I assume most of you had this contact from your institution anyway, but we go through a network of about 130 institutions from around the world. Each of those have got a small number, a handful of nominations, mostly kind of 3, 4, 5 nominations bracket. They all do their nominations slightly differently depending on the scale of their institution. So please contact your coordinator for nominations so that they will explain the details of what happens in your institution. If you don't know who this is, then please drop us a line at info@schmidtsciencefellows.org, and one of us will be able to let you know who your coordinator is. Unfortunately, if you're not in one of those 130 odd institutions that are nominating partners, then unfortunately you will not be eligible to apply. So once you've gone through the internal processes in your institution and you've been given the nod to proceed, then first of all, congratulations. As I said, there's a small number per institution, so getting down to that, even to that stage, is some recognition of quality. You will then, the nominations information will be sent to us. You'll get then details of how to apply the access codes and the various links to our application process and an application form that will open on May the 8th. And by May 29th, we ask that all the nominees have submitted the basic details: PhD, discipline, completion date, personal details, and contact information. And that's really important to get that information early. This is what the team uses to build the disciplinary focused academic review panels to make sure that there's enough expertise in the room to assess your proposal. So when pulling that application together, please read the guidance document that will be provided within the application portal. This is really detailed. It provides hopefully all the information you require. The application will be based on what you've done in your PhD, the highlights of your PhD, the outputs, but also your future plans, your ideas for your pivot, the ideas for your placement, a personal statement, and also academic history and letters of recommendation from various of your reviewers. This all must be submitted by July 14th. This is at 5 p.m. British Summer Time, so GMT +1. The selection team of Schmidt Science Fellows is based in Oxford in the UK, and so we kind of work on UK time. So please make sure that you get everything in by 5 p.m. on GMT +1. We will not be unfortunately able to accept any late submissions. So things to consider when you're pulling your ideas together and your application together. I think the one up here is the first one, is the most important, is really, is your future research proposal a genuine pivot from your PhD research, or is it a continuation of what you've already been doing? Now, if it's the latter, then really think hard about whether this is the right fellowship for you. We are looking for people, hopefully you'll have got this from my presentation, we are looking for people who are doing a genuine shift of discipline. What new tools, new methods, new expertise will you need to learn from in order to take forward your research ideas? And how do those interests really align with what we're trying to achieve in addressing the kind of global challenges that we've set out before? So there's loads of support available to you as you're developing your application. Nominating partners each have got a sample application form with the kinds of questions that we ask for. They're not exactly the same, but they're near enough. There's also loads of information on our website. The link is on the screen, including a great animation about the pivot, a briefing for applicants, and also this year we're trialing some office hours, so we'll be able to block off 10-minute slots with one of the selection managers who are all amazing, and we'll be able to help you with any of your questions you may have as you're putting together the last period of your application process. So I'm leaving the dates here. These are the main dates. I guess the important ones are the ones that are in bold. So the application opens on May the 9th. The preliminary information is required by May 29th, and the application full deadline is July 14th. And again, as I said, we can't accept any late submissions here. The final interviews will be taking place over the weekend of the January 23rd to 24th, 2026, and more details will be forthcoming if and when you're submitted, you're nominated for final selection. And we're hoping to announce round about today next year. We announced the 2025 cohort this morning. So please check out the website and have a look at the brand new fellows that have just been announced. Speaking of brand new and not so brand new fellows, I'll be joined in a second by Daniel Lim, who is one of our 2024 fellows who's currently going through the leadership program and is just in his first year of the fellowship, and Susmita Sarkar, who is one of our senior fellows. She was in the 2023 cohort, and this was slightly further on in the fellowship journey. And I'll introduce them in a second. But just to finalise, we'll open for Q&A. Unfortunately, we can't answer questions about specific proposals. We can't go into the detail because we don't have the knowledge of what you're really proposing. We can speak in general terms. But if you've got particular questions about your specific circumstances, then please contact either Abby, Fiona, or Chloe, the selection team, on info@schmidtsciencefellows.org, and they'll be very happy to answer any questions for you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you very much for listening. I'll now ask Daniel and Susmita to unmute, and we'll start the Q&A. I stopped sharing, right?
Yes, you did.
Cool. Okay, so I'll turn to Daniel first. So maybe introduce yourself a little bit, and then maybe explain, what your pivot was, and how or why did you decide on it?
Yeah, thank you, David. It's really a pleasure to meet you all today. So, quick introduction. I'm Daniel. I did my doctoral work in an area known as metasurfaces. So along with the study of fundamental structures of electromagnetic radiation, this refers to imagining if you could shrink the size of a lens all the way down to maybe a couple microns thick and be able to make things at the centimeter scale. So optics, photonics, nanofabrication. I did this in Harvard University. And my pivot, I'm currently based in California. I'm in Stanford University in the Department of Molecular and Cellular Physiology. So I actually made two pivots, and this is something I can come back to. The first pivot was from applied physics over into diagnostic radiology. So I worked on ultrasound, and then I moved again from ultrasound into molecular biology. So looking into techniques to deliver really large nanoparticles and DNA into cells without killing them. And so, I mean, I'm going to be honest, pivot is challenging. And a pivot actually does make you feel like you are really, really stupid sometimes. You come into a new field, you're going to know less than the undergrads in the lab. But it's also an immense opportunity for learning and for growth. In moving from optics into ultrasound, I was moving from an area of linear optics, So lots of devices, linear systems behave very, very nicely and are really fun to work with. They're very deterministic. But most of life and most of the messiness and joys of life, they occur in the non-linear spaces. It's kind of like dividing the universe into bananas and non-bananas. There's like linear and non-linear dynamics. And I wanted to exist in this space where things were messy, but this is actually where intervention needs to occur. So I moved towards the direction of something which was in medical technology, something very explicitly applied towards the human condition. And I would not give it up for anything else in this field.
Thanks, Daniel. So Smita, is that the same kind of rationale for you? Did you decide to move into bananas as well?
Yeah, kind of. So I would probably do a bit of introduction about me. So I did my PhD and my background is in mechanical engineering. I did it at Purdue, where I was studying, how to make batteries better for applications related to electric vehicles, grid applications, like large scale applications. So I was studying next generation of batteries, how to understand why they fail, how they explode, all those kind of cool stuff. But then when I started my PhD second year in, the COVID hit, and I realized how healthcare is important, how important it is. So then, at that time, I was wondering if I can like switch my research. Unfortunately, I could not. So this postdoctoral opportunity was perfect for me, where I had my placement at Stanford. I started working on biomedical applications, and I was particularly interested in making stretchable and flexible kind of devices which could be adapted for many different applications. One of the key important factor was it should be cheap so that it could be employed, worldwide. So for that, I had to, learn a lot of new tools, new techniques. I switched from mechanical to chemical engineering. I did not know how to run reactions and all that. So I had to learn all of those. But now I feel like, it was kind of the best opportunity to pivot and to learn in new challenging areas. Now last year, I started as an assistant professor at NC State, where in my group, I'm currently making these flexible devices, and then as well as I'm developing flexible batteries for those devices. So without that pivot, I don't think I would have. I would not say I'm the expert on that topic, but at least I know how to, read the problem and who to collaborate with if I need any particular expertise.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So Daniel, if I turn back to you, so obviously you're in the same situation as the people on the call last year. So can you explain how did it feel to even consider moving from something you were like a real expert in, as Smita said, real expert in an area, moving into something that was really something you knew nothing about or very little about? How did that make you feel? How do you work through that?
It's pretty terrifying. I'll be honest. It's also extremely rewarding. I think, yes, when I was making the decision on how and where to pivot, one of the things that I was considering was, if you're in a new field, you're not going to be able to publish really that much intensely in the new field for some time. And I was worried whether this would be seen negatively from the perspective of people in the future that wanted to hire me. But at the same time, I felt like the more time I spent in one field, the more ways I learned, or the more things I was really good at identifying things that wouldn't work in my old field. I wasn't really sure about how I could see things that could work. And then jumping to a new environment with kind of a beginner's mindset where you don't know what is impossible yet. So you just go and propose every single thing that can exist. And some of these things are going to be complete nonsense, but there's some really good gems in there that wouldn't be thought of, because if you exist in the same field for some time, you just don't really think about certain directions or certain areas. And I think being able to exist in this beginner's mindset was extremely rewarding, because yes, I learned a lot about what couldn't work in my new field, but I was also able to propose things that were just so far out of the conventional norm that it could actually work. And I'm actually testing some of these things now, some ways of blending together a bit of electrical engineering into the molecular biology hood. So having massive power amplifiers and cables snaking into a bio cabinet, bringing these two things together is really exciting. And I wouldn't have done that if I had only stayed in one field. So
Cool.
I knew that was what I wanted to do.
Thank you very much. So Smita, I mean, I guess that sounds, I think you may have answered my next question, but how is being a Schmidt Science Fellow really, and the experience of being in that cohort and being in this group has really influenced your current research and your scientific outlook more generally?
Yeah, so I would say that it gave me, the space to explore new research direction. And as Daniel said, it's highly rewarding sometimes. When you jump to a new field, you don't know what's not working or was the conventional things for like the scientist who is already working on that topic. So for me, like I knew that I wanted to be somewhat different than my PhD advisor. And I wanted to have my own niche area where nobody should work. And I wanted to start a new direction of research. So that was the kind of the first thing that was in my mind when I was selecting my pivot. I did it for a very short time because I had the faculty position already lined up. So I had to finish my postdoc early. But that kind of gave me the perfect opportunity to focus on learning rather than publishing. My target was to learn new tools, new techniques, widen my network, make collaboration with people across disciplines. That gave me the perfect opportunity to set up for, for my current role. So as I said, I wanted to have my own unique and niche area. And, I'm trying to bridge my PhD work. It's not that I completely abandoned my PhD work. I'm trying to bridge what I have done in my PhD. And along the line, I'm trying to set up different research areas. And I found the missing link or the gap between those two different fields, the biomedical application and energy storage. So I'm trying to bridge between this mechanical, material science, sometime electrical too, and chemical engineering, of course.
Great, thank you. I've got one more question for each of you, and then we can move on to the questions from the audience. So Daniel, obviously I mentioned one of the important things is around the placement and choosing the right placement lab to go to. So how did you go about choosing it? You could have chosen anywhere in the world. How do you approach choosing your placement labs?
So I think I can split it into both pull and push factors. From the pull side, I knew I wanted to do something in medical technology. I knew that eventually I wanted to move towards science policy. I wanted to be able to work in these spheres. And so my current advisor has existed in both fields. My current advisor has moved from physics into biology, and he has also served in the US cabinet. So the combination of both science as well as the policy related fields was something which I think worked really well for me. The push factors as well. I knew I wanted to be in a different location. I wanted to be out of state as well. So I was talking and looking at in postdoctoral positions that were just all over the world and all over the country. And I think I really encourage all of you to use this opportunity to just cold email anybody that you're interested in. And especially once you have the Schmidt Science Fellowships behind you, that it's a lot easier to get people to respond once the affiliation is there. But personally, for me, I did this before. I got the fellowship, and so just thinking through where I wanted to end up, where I wanted to move towards, and what different locations could offer was really helpful.
Thank you very much. And finally, Susmita, I mentioned in my presentation about the importance and power of the community, and you've been part of our community now for a couple of years. What's your experience been of that community?
Being part of the Schmidt Science community has been amazing. It's a group that generally, encourage interdisciplinary collaboration, and I have learned so much from like researchers around like from different fields. You know, we have such a diverse network. We can connect with people. So we have this interdisciplinary science summit, and I have attended quite a few. And you know, that those kind of science summits gives us the perfect opportunity to talk with those people across you know, different areas. So I had a very successful collaboration. I started like last semester with another Schmidt fellow. So we are still in the preliminary stages. So I attended one of her talk in the Science Summit, and she talked about her, she works in the biomedical application side, and she talked about how the bottleneck was making a battery that lasts longer, also is not bulky, so that the patient doesn't have to carry the weight of the batteries and all. So then we talked, and now we have a regular, you know, meetings, and we're trying to come up with the first prototype of those applications. So that just shows you that how powerful those summits are, or how powerful those connections are. It was just like, you know, 1 minute talk, and then we extended the collaboration. So other than that, it's also the people. I don't know how they select these people or the cohorts. These will be your lifelong friends. So we regularly, even though I graduated, we are senior fellows, we regularly stay in touch. One of us have some achievement. Everybody is just so happy for you, and they would celebrate you. And it's hard to find, you know, friend at, I think, at such a stage. And this fellowship gave us this kind of a perfect small cohort, small enough cohort that you can be friend for lifelong.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It was like that was prepared response, but you're really grateful for both you, Smita, and also Daniel for your answers there. We may come back to you if there's a question that is better answered by someone who's gone through the program. But I think we've got quite a few questions from the audience. I think Chloe is going to curate that for us. Hopefully that's given the team time to kind of work out what the main topics are. Chloe.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for the presentation, David, and for answering the questions so helpfully and thoughtfully, so Smita and Daniel. Yeah, we've got a lot of questions from the audience. So just a reminder that please email us at info@schmidtsciencefellows.org if we don't get to your specific question. We're trying to address them on themes, these questions. So let's get started. So we've had a lot of questions, not surprisingly, on the pivot. So what we'd like to, what the audience would like to get a feel for is how much should they balance ambition of their proposed project with the 2-year time frame of the fellowship. And maybe this is something that Susmita and Daniel, you could talk about, and how did you approach this? Ambition versus the time frame.
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you.
Yeah. So for me, yes, because I mean, the goal of this fellowship, right, was to have a big ambition and quite a large pivot from your PhD research area. And as Daniel mentioned, it's terrifying. Sometimes, you know, the undergrads know more than you do. So sometimes you do have to learn from them, and you have to accept that, you know, you need to ask for help while you are learning that. So during my fellowship journey, I realized that sometimes those ambitious project, you don't get the results that you thought would work. So what I did, you know, after a couple of months, I started having 2 research direction. One was safe, that I knew that was going to work and give me some results that could be either published or presented in a conference, or give me some preliminary data for a future proposal. And the second was the ambitious project that I targeted for. So that was my approach, and definitely it takes time. So it's that was just me, that I wanted to divide my time on a less risky project as well as a high rewarding project. Sometimes if this one project is not working, I go back to and do the other one. Yeah, I don't know what's Daniel's experience is.
I think that's a fantastic thing to do, to have a high risk project and simultaneously also see something which is which allows you to develop skills, but maybe might be a little more low risk. I think for the project ambition, I think it's like writing a grant. You want to communicate the final endpoint. you may not get there because you're going to follow the data, you're going to follow what you see on the results, and you're going to move according to what the data tells you. And this community and the staff in the fellowship are extremely supportive. They're not the type to say that, hey, you didn't do this particular pivot, we're going to challenge your fellowship. They've been really supportive the entire time to just embark in exploratory science in a very high risk manner. So like how I pivoted a second time, this was done in conjunction with my Schmidt mentor. So as a member of the academic staff who is really just a person invested in you and helping you process a lot of the directions and thoughts that you have. And I'm just really grateful for the support during this fellowship process. It's really amazing.
Just to add to that from my perspective, I think one of the great things about our program is that our assessors, our selectors are really experienced. They've done, many of them have done 5, 6, 7 years worth of interviews, and so really understand what we're trying to achieve, and also recognize that these big pivots, these moves across disciplines will take time. You will be going back to almost first principles and learning something from scratch, and so they're not expecting everything to work. And so we don't, as Daniel said, we don't have KPIs, we don't have objectives that you must have published X number of papers by the end of the first year, or we're going to can you. That's not how we work. We want people to take risks, and sometimes risks don't pay off, and that's fine. And as long as you've got a plan B, and I think Susmita's strategy is a really great one. You do some really some kind of straightforward stuff that you kind of know is pretty much going to work, and then some really risky stuff alongside that. It means that you're keeping the momentum going. It's keeping your morale up as well, because there's nothing worse. I know this coming from that lab experience. Nothing worse than months of experiments not working. So actually being able to have those multiple tracks and the support of both the Fellowship Affairs team and the Academic Council to really help steer that and support that with our fellows is really valuable. Chloe.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it's really helpful for you to offer this sort of guidance to the audience. Actually, we've got a specific question, Susmita, for you. How did the pivot affect translating into a career in academia for you? Would you mind to sort of talk us through that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so I actually had this position before I had my postdoctoral fellowship. So I knew that I was going to join the department and work on the area of energy storage. That was kind of the area that I was hired for. But when I got my fellowship and I asked for an extension from the department, and I started my fellowship, and I knew that I wanted to do something different in what's been done traditionally in mechanical or in the battery field. So most of the researchers in the battery field, I think they have a disconnection from people who is working on the bio side, or even like agriculture or like other applications, right? And we see the application of energy storage almost in everything. And each of them has their own challenges. But since the people from multiple disciplines were not talking, they could not understand what the gaps were. So most of the people in my previous research area, they were targeting for just particular applications. They were not thinking about broader ways or other areas where you can get funding from. So since I'm a junior faculty, it's really hard to compete against already established PI who is kind of the expert on my previous research area. And also my postdoc advisor, she's an expert on another area. So my role or my goal for this particular position is I wanted to bridge the gap between, or I wanted to have a connection between my previous research and my postdoc research, so that the area is unique to me, and I thought it would be easier for me to convince proposal reviewers that you should fund me because I'm trying to do something different than what people are traditionally doing. So I have not yet got I'm not yet in that stage of getting a proposal accepted, but we'll see how that works.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for answering that. Actually, and we also have a follow-up question for you, Daniel. It's on a point that you mentioned. Do you ever feel like you've been penalized because of making these pivots in your career? Like, for example, in applications or hiring or grant reviewing?
No, I
No.
think what I would strongly recommend to everyone considering the pivot is continue working on what you have done during your doctoral time. The things that you have worked on, they're not all going to get published immediately. It's going to take some time. Continue to follow through with everything that you have started and follow through with the connections that you have made. So I haven't published in my new field yet, but I have managed to continue publishing in my doctoral field with people that I've been working with for some time. And I think being in the new field where there's an explicit medical direction has actually made it much easier for me to give credibility to my research direction. So I've been doing faculty applications and specifically targeting medical technology and biotechnology. And I think doing this strictly from my doctoral position would have been impossible because I wouldn't have any credibility in the field. But because I interact regularly with molecular biologists and people who are working in medical research, I can speak credibly to the projects that I want to work on. And so it's not been a penalty, it's instead been an immense benefit and something which it's something which has been critical in my professional development.
Chloe, I want to add one more thing what Daniel said.
Yeah, please do.
It's not that you get penalized. I think it opens new opportunities for you to apply in different departments if you're thinking of academic position, and that separates you from other colleague who has been traditionally trained in a particular area for a long time. So I think nowadays most of the universities, they are promoting interdisciplinary and they want someone who can do multiple projects or who can collaborate with multiple people across discipline, across universities. And for that, I think, if you can prove that you are, not necessarily you have to have a publication, but you can prove that you have experiences working in, multiple areas, I think it will be always rewarded, regardless of the school or the department.
Yeah, thanks both. I think this is super reassuring for the audience. I wonder now if we can go on to, actually, I would like to have a couple of questions around the sort of more specific selection criteria and process. I think for David, maybe you could, if possible, describe for the audience a bit more the difference between application area and PhD discipline. This is with reference to our pivot diagram. And maybe elaborate on what distinguishes a large change from PhD from a moderate one, for example, and also, for example, if a candidate was combining different aspects or technologies from their PhD research to new disciplines and different questions. I mean, I wonder if you could sort of talk around that a bit, please, and what we expect from the applications.
That was a very long and complicated question, Chloe.
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry.
I will do my best. I may bounce it back to you if I get lost halfway through my answer. So in terms of, I guess the kind of pooling, how different does different need to be in terms of the kind of the pivot? And I guess the rule of thumb, it's very difficult to answer any of these questions in the abstract. Because none of us are experts in everything, and so without really like concrete examples, it's quite difficult to kind of give that general advice. I guess my rule of thumb is that if you are doing something that you could probably get an extension grant on your doctoral work, or you do a postdoc straight off without doing too much maneuvering of the project, then I would say that's not a sufficient pivot. If you are combining things, and this is a particular example for AI tools, machine learning, LLM type tools. If you are pulling together AI, for example, technologies and techniques that you've used already, but you're using it, you want to take it in a completely different direction, then that's okay. What we're not looking for is people who are just using existing AI on their existing model, because that's just more of the same. So I think the question that I would encourage you to ask yourself is, is what I'm thinking of a logical extension to what I'm already doing? If the answer is yes, then maybe think again. If when you've talked to your advisor, your PhD advisor, your postdoc advisor, people in your institution more generally, if they go, oh, that's quite different, getting that advice early is really valuable. Also, if they say, well, you get a grant, I've got money from NSF to do that. That gives you an indication. So really, my advice is to seek advice from people that you trust, people whose expertise you value and you respect, and ask them the questions like, if this was in your lab, would you expect this to be a logical trajectory for a postdoc? Or is it something that's kind of sits outside what they're looking for? If it sits outside what they're looking for, then that's kind of what we're after. So yeah, that's kind of my advice. In terms of application, PhD discipline versus application, again, it's quite difficult to speak in the abstract. But if you're working on the same model system, but you just happen to coming at it from a different angle, then again, that's a difficult one to kind of justify that it is a significant pivot away from what you're doing. If you're taking a model system and turning on its head and using a completely different approach and a completely different set of tools, technologies, but happens to be in a kind of similar area, then that would probably sit within the bottom end of things, the three A's, the twos. But again, seek advice. Really think about where your field is going. Is it are there people already publishing in this area? If that's the case, then probably it's not a sufficient pivot for us. If it's something that's really difficult to try and find any prior art in, then that suggests it probably is quite innovative and quite novel, and it's one to explore. Did I answer all the parts of your question?
You did, yeah. No, you did. Thank you. That's great. Yes, yeah, we did. We talked about the size of the pivot. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think so. We just mindful that we only have 5 minutes right now. What I'd like to do is talk a bit about the placement process. I know both Susmita and Daniel really helpfully talked about how you went about approaching your proposed placement institutes. But if we could ask David, please, is it possible for an applicant to apply if they already have a postdoc position, and how they should approach this in their application, and how is that viewed by the selection process?
Yeah, so I think the answer is yes, you can. We certainly wouldn't expect people to sit around. It's a long process, and if you're finishing your PhD, you do need to have some income. So we appreciate that actually, and it's a highly selective fellowship. So, the chances of actually getting one are they're less than 10%. So of course we'd expect people to be continuing to look for jobs and get jobs while they're waiting for the outcomes of the process. Once you get the fellowship, then there's a large number of conversations take place with our fellowship affairs team, with our academic council member mentors, to really kind of unpack where you want to go, what you want to do, what skills and expertise you want to achieve in your fellowship. Just so that everyone is aware of what you want to do, just so that you can start airing your own ideas and they can provide some advice. That may well be in the lab you're already situated in as a postdoc, and if that's the case, that's cool. But it might not. It might be something slightly different, and actually you might have to rethink about where you're going. And so I think that's taking Daniel's advice is really making this opportunity a great one. You've got that freedom, and you've got that the finances behind you to pay your salary wherever you want. So you may well have chosen a postdoc in your local institution because it's the logical transition from your PhD. But now you've got an opportunity to go somewhere else if you so wish. And so we really encourage people to really think about where's the best place in the world to do this research, where's the best group, best lab, the best PI in the world to do this work, and really think about how to kind of get there. That may well be in the same institution. We don't let people stay in the same lab as they did their PhD. You can stay in the same institution should you wish. We don't encourage it, but we appreciate that there are personal circumstances such that you may have to stay in a particular city or a particular region or a particular country for family reasons or for cultural reasons or for caring responsibilities or what have you. And that's absolutely fine. But that's a conversation to be had with advisors. But yes, fundamentally, yes, you can be in a postdoc. Yes, you could stay there, but equally, you should be able to defend this with our mentors, just to make sure that you are using the most of this fellowship.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. We've got like 2 minutes left. I just wonder if Susmita and Daniel want to each say a final couple of words of advice or your fellow wisdom to the audience before we wrap up.
Maybe I just want to add on a bit to what David said. As an international student in the US, I know it's really important to be able to maintain academic connection at any point in time so that your visa remains valid. And I think I strongly recommend talking to your current doctoral advisor about the possibility of doing a bridging postdoc. So you can think about this as like a short-term extension, but you're in a postdoctoral position. So it gives you a bit of flexibility because you can cut it short if necessary to move to a new position, and it ensures that there is no gap in your employment, in your visa status, so that you remain valid the entire time.
That's great. Thank you, Daniel. And Susmita, any last words?
Yes. So before one piece of advice I wanted to give before you start looking for your placement, I would say that you also interview the faculties that you are going to work for. It's just not one-way interview. You should also interview them. Ask about the group culture, whether because you are going to spend a significant amount of time trying to learn a completely different area. So you need a supportive environment for that. So instead of just selecting that I want to work with one particular person, I would suggest that reach out to multiple people, see how the group culture looks like, talk with the students who are already in the group, and make your decision. I think that's the last thing I wanted to add.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
As well.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Susmita, for really insightful thoughts around the Schmidt Science Fellowship. Thank you to everyone for staying on. We've just gone down just below 200, but we've had 270, I think, on this call, which was fantastic. I really hope it was helpful. There will be a recording of it and the questions will be answered, so please keep an eye out for that. If you have anything that you want to pick up, any questions that you think about afterwards that you didn't have the chance to ask, please drop a line to info@schmidtsciencefellows.org and one of the team will answer it. But thank you very much for your attention. As I said, I hope it was useful, and I hope you have a very lovely rest of the day, wherever you are. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.